Hey, what's up guys? Joker here. Today we are going to be taking a look at a custom PC build featuring the Threadripper 1950X. This system was provided out by the guys over at AVA Direct, who were gracious enough to provide it out for me so that I can get some first-person hands-on experience with Threadripper, because I haven't been able to test it up until now. I unfortunately didn't get any of them from the guys over at AMD, so really happy that AVA Direct was able to provide out this system. And just spoiler alert, after spending close to about a month and a half now using the 1950X to work on and render all of the videos here on the channel, I have been absolutely blown away. Threadripper 1950X is nothing short of a life-changing processor for me when it comes to the amount of time that it saves me in terms of rendering out 4K videos and things of the like. Because up until now, I've been using a 6800K for about the past 2 years. It's been that long since I did an overhaul on my main system that I game and work on. So going from a 6-core 12-threaded processor from Intel over to a 16-core 32-threaded processor has just been insane, and it's cut down my renders by an insane amount, and we're going to get into all of that. Of course, we're going to talk about the gaming performance on this system as well, which is also excellent. The Threadripper can certainly keep up with games and handling SLI, because this system is rocking two 1080 Ti's in SLI, so I tested those at 4K and 1440p, and we'll get into all of those numbers later in the video. And of course, if you do want to go check out what AVA Direct does on their website, I'd appreciate it. I'm sure they would as well. And if you use my code JPFREESHIP at checkout, you will get free shipping on anything that you buy over there. You can customize a full system, laptop, whatever you want to do over there. You can customize a full system, and these guys are great. Like I said, I've worked with them a couple times in the past, and they're just really good at delivering, pre-built systems that they put together themselves, and it's just a turnkey solution. So you get it and you turn it on and it just works fantastic. I actually saw one of their custom builds out at PAX East last month. They had a PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds custom system, which looked absolutely gorgeous. They did a fantastic job on that. They always do a good job, and the people over there are also great. They've been fantastic to work with. So yeah, let's get into the system though and talk about the specs inside of this Threadripper build, which comes in at just under $6,000. So it's definitely not for the faint of heart when it comes to the price on it, but it's got some super high-end components in here, starting off with that Threadripper 1950X, which retails for just under $1,000. I've actually even recently seen them on sale for around $750 to $800, which, I know it sounds like a lot, but honestly, after using it for about a month and a half now, I think that price is totally justifiable, and at $750 or $800, if you can get one of them on sale, I would honestly consider that a steal. Now, for the case here, they put it in the Inwin 805 red case. This does come in a few different color variants from the guys over at Inwin, and I've actually built inside of this case in the past. It's pretty much all tempered glass all the way around on the front and both of the side panels, which is certainly going to affect how you want to do your cable management. And that's one thing that I can really commend AVA on, is that in the two systems I've tried from them so far, their cable management has been second to none. Like, I could not do cable management this well, and what even is better in this system about that is that I could say, to credit them, is that this is using the Corsair Commander Pro, and they've got like different hubs in there for the RGB and the fans and everything like that, and I've used those in a system in the past, and it was an absolute nightmare in terms of cable management. So for whoever was assembled this system and took care of all of the cable management, like, you, sir, are a talented individual, because the cable management on here is just perfect. And the Inwin 805 doesn't really do a lot to help you in terms of cable management. I mean, you've got your, your cutouts and everything to run your cables through, but the basement is open. You don't have a power supply cover or anything to really help hide those cables and all of that mess. And so just because of that, it looks really clean, as you guys can obviously see here, even on the back side, which, because this does have a rear tempered glass side panel as well, you can see all of that work, and you want to make sure that the cable management's going to look good. They did a fantastic job. For the cooling on the 1950X, they used the Corsair Hydro 115i. That's a 280mm radiator, and it certainly did a very good job of cooling Threadripper in gaming, or if I was rendering out videos. I don't think I ever saw the CPU actually go over 60 degrees Celsius. So the Corsair H115i actually did a pretty damn good job on Threadripper. The motherboard in here is definitely a top-end X399 board. It's the Asus ROG Strix. As I said, X399. It's an EATX motherboard. Tons of connectivity on the back side, and just, yeah, really great looking motherboard on there. It's got RGB and everything, so definitely doing the job here for Threadripper. The RAM in here is a 32GB kit from Kingston. It's their HyperX Predator RAM at 3000 megahertz with CAS latency 15, so fast RAM, low latency, which is always going to be a good thing on any Ryzen processor, especially even so on Threadripper. And as I said, this system is rocking two GTX 1080 Ti's in SLI. These are the MSI Duke cards, which are really nice looking cards, black and white color scheme, so I just really like the look of the cards and everything like that. And we're going to talk about the SLI performance later in the video, but for 4K, they did a really good job, and they stayed pretty cool as well. One card always does get hotter than the other when it comes to SLI, because you got the bottom card and the top card, and the top card tends to get a lot hotter because it's got the heat coming off of the rear PCB going up into the top card. So that top card always tends to run quite a bit warmer than the bottom one, about 10 to 15 degrees Celsius, which you can see in the side-by-side comparisons. Kind of escapable when it comes to an SLI solution, but the other card, you know, running around 70 degrees Celsius should give you a pretty good idea of how cool these cards would run if you were running a single GPU solution and not using two of them in SLI. The power supply in here is a Corsair RM1000X 80 plus gold rated power supply. Great power supply. The one complaint that I did have about the system, and it's really the only complaint, is that I didn't like that they mounted the power supply with the fan facing up. That's just a personal preference of mine. When it comes to installing a power supply, I always like to have the fan facing downward, so that's something I would definitely have preferred to see them do, but it's really the only gripe that I have with this entire system, and it's a minor one at that, as it didn't really seem to impact our overall temperatures of the system in any way. It's just kind of a personal thing of mine. I like to have the fan facing down. It's just me. Let me know down in the comments below how you feel about it. Are you a power supply fan facing up or a facing down person, or do you just not care? For the storage in here, it's rocking two SSDs. One is an NVMe M.2 drive in the Samsung 960 EVO, which is a 500 gigabyte. And then for all of the mass storage, we've got a Samsung 1 terabyte 850 EVO. That's just a standard SSD. So having that NVMe drive is definitely appreciative for me for getting the fast boot times, and also for handling my video files and things along those lines. And then having the extra 1 terabyte drive is great for all of the game storage and everything, so you can fit a lot of games on there and still get pretty much fast loading. But so yeah, some very high-end specs inside of this system, which is, you know, kind of why the price tag is at $5,600 when the system was sent to me, which is kind of like the dream build, though. This is kind of like if you could take buckets and buckets of cash and just throw them at a system and get something sent to your door, which is the turnkey solution that you don't have to worry about anything with. You just plug it in, turn it on, it's good to go, and it's just super duper high end. And if that's something you want, you can get that. But of course, you can go on their website and kind of customize things to your liking and get something a little bit more affordable. If that's what you're wanting to do, you can, you know, certainly get a system under $1,000, $2,000, whatever you want to do. It's kind of your ball game, and you can customize it over on their website accordingly, which is kind of one of the good things about this. Is if you don't want to get into system building, or you don't have the time to learn how to build a system or anything, this is certainly a good option, and you get something shipped to your door, you plug it in, it's good to go right away. So that's kind of why these custom builds exist. Of course, I'm a system builder. I love building my own systems and everything, but I could certainly see the value in something like this from a company like AVA Direct. So it's good that we do have these services available so that more people can kind of come into the PC Master Race fold. Whether they want to build a system or not, you could still get yourself a kick-ass custom PC. And yeah, let's get into the testing though, shall we, on the Threadripper 1950X with the two GTX 1080 Ti's in SLI. So I tested all of the games here in 4K as well as 1440p, and I would say that the two 1080 Ti's definitely saw their benefit the most when it came to 4K gaming, as most of the games here, not all of them, saw pretty damn good SLI scaling when it came to 4K. However, at 1440p, there is a pretty steep drop-off, which when we get into the average FPS numbers, you'll see that the comparisons are actually pretty close. at 1440p and 4K, depending on the title. Of course, there are some games that just scale a lot better with SLI, like Metro Last Light Redux scaled really well, Sniper Elite 4, Witcher 3 also scaled pretty well, at least when it comes to 4K, but then other games, you drop down to 1440p, and the scaling just kind of goes right out the window, as it's just not really fully leveraging the graphics cards. And honestly, you really don't need two 1080 Ti's in SLI for 1440p gaming, even high refresh rate stuff like 144 Hz. I personally feel that if you're just wanting to do 1440, 144 Hz gaming, that two 1080 Ti's is probably going to be a bit overkill, because you really don't need a solid 144 FPS to take advantage of a high refresh rate G-Sync monitor, let's say, that you would hopefully be pairing with if you're going for something like a 1080 Ti. So one card would be perfect for that, but for 4K, in all the games tested here, not a single one of them averaged below 60 FPS. Far Cry 5 was probably the worst as far as SLI scaling was concerned, because even at 4K, it wasn't getting full 100% utilization like it was in some of the other games. Now, when it comes to the Threadripper 1950X, it's certainly very capable of handling all of these games and not really bottlenecking you in any way, even though mine was running at 3.9 gigahertz locked. I had it locked at 3.9 gigahertz in the BIOS so that it wouldn't fluctuate at all, and that was the max stable that I can get it to. I tried pushing it up to 4 gigahertz, but it would crash after a little while, and especially if I were to start a render, it would usually crash within about 30 seconds or so. So 3.9 gigahertz was stable for me on the 1950X. We'll just have to wait for the new Threadrippers coming out probably by the end of the year. We'll probably see something like a 2950X, and if the recent Ryzen launch is anything to go by, I'm expecting to probably see those around 4.2 to 4.3 gigahertz on a good day with an overclock. So hopefully we'll see those in the future. But for now, we've got the 1950X at 3.9 gigahertz, and it was perfectly capable of dealing with the two 1080 Ti's in SLI, whether it was at 4K or 1440p, without limiting them in any way. So, yeah, perfectly good processor for gaming. Is it going to benefit you immensely? No, it's not necessary to get a 1950X solely for gaming, and I would not steer anyone in that direction. As I even recently tested the 2700X and the 2600X, it showed a negligible difference in performance, only about 2 to 3 FPS difference there in the games that I tested on them. So the core count really isn't going to matter as much after a certain point. 6 cores, 12 threads is perfectly capable enough for gaming, so you can get something like a 2600X if that's what you're wanting to do, or an i7-8700K. If you want to go the Intel route, you could do either one of those, and that is going to be more than enough for your current gaming needs. When you start getting into 8 cores, you're not going to see a massive benefit for games, but you will when it comes to multi-threaded workloads. So obviously with something like Threadripper here, 16 cores, 32 threads, you're not going to see a massive benefit in terms of just raw gaming performance. It's not going to be a upgrade over even, an 8-core 16-threaded processor when it comes to games, but for multi-threaded stuff, like working in Sony Vegas and video editing like I do on a daily basis, then you will see a massive benefit, because I cannot tell you how amazing it is to see 32 threads lit up running at near 100% load while it's rendering out a 4K video. I put it through on Sony Vegas, and just to do a quick test, I mean, like I said, I've been rendering on this thing for the past month and a half, but just to kind of do a test, it's the identical test that I actually did in my recent video on the 2600X versus the 2700X on the new Ryzen CPUs, and that took 2 video layers and overlaid them on top, one over the other, with a transparent PNG, and also 2 audio files, and it was exactly 5 minutes long, this video, and I rendered it out at 4K, and it ended up taking just under 10 minutes to do that on the Threadripper 1950X. For point of comparison, the 2700X took around 15 minutes, while the 2600X took closer to 19 minutes. So that's kind of the difference you're looking at there between these two different processors. Now, of course, those other Ryzen CPUs are perfectly fine when it comes to rendering out video, but when you are doing it on a daily basis, I can certainly see the value of the 1950X. When you're taking the 2700X and going to this, you're shaving about 5 minutes off of a 4K render, a 5-minute 4K render. So yeah, it's about a 2-to-1 ratio, really. It's a 5-minute video, like I said, and it took just under 10 minutes to render out. So it's about a 2-to-1 ratio there on the render, and you're not always going to be running 2 videos one on top of the other. So that's, yeah, that could also account for why it was taking a bit longer. But it's certainly cut down my render times by a hell of a lot. Going from a 6800K to this, doing a 5-minute 4K render like the one that I did here for my little test here, it probably would have taken closer to like 25 or 30 minutes. So that's a massive amount of time. You're looking at like a 66% reduction in how much time you're going to be sitting around with your thumbs up your ass waiting for a video to render out. So Threadripper for me is just like a godsend, and it's absolutely amazing. I don't know how I'm going to go back to ever editing on a 6-core 12-threaded processor again. I seriously need a Threadripper build in my life full time. Let's go ahead now and take a look at the average FPS, and then we'll follow that up with the 1% lows here on the system. As I said, you know, running SLI here with the 1950X, all the games were tested at ultra settings, and you can see that at 4K, none of these games are coming down below 60 FPS on average, which is, you know, really good to see. SLI scaling is certainly not perfect. I mean, you could just see it evidently here, like in a game like Far Cry 5. I mean, 69 FPS at 4K, 77 at 1440p. Something is definitely amuck there, and the frame rate gap should be a lot bigger between those two resolutions if the scaling was completely perfect. Of course, it still runs over 60 FPS at 4K maxed out on two 1080 Ti's, but you're not seeing the full benefit of those cards, where if you look over at something like Sniper Elite 4, which got 137 average FPS at 4K, and then 224 at 1440p, that's in the realm of realistically where it should be. Even something like Rainbow Six Siege with a gap of about 50 FPS, that game saw pretty good SLI scaling as well. But the other games here, not seeing the most benefit out of having two cards at the lower resolution. But of course, for 4K, it's certainly going to help you get better performance and stay over 60 FPS in pretty much any modern title out there that happens to support SLI. But unfortunately, SLI is just not as good as it used to be, and the scaling isn't great in the vast majority of games here. So yeah, if you're wanting to do 4K, it's something worth looking at if you want to, of course, stay over 60 FPS average. But for 1440p, it's kind of unnecessary, in my personal opinion. Of course, if you are interested in getting 144 FPS locked in every game that you play, then, you know, that's going to get you closer to being able to do that, as a lot of the games here were running around 144 FPS or above. But in my personal opinion, it's a bit overkill, as you can handle one card and still get probably over 100 FPS in all of these games. And looking at the 1% low here, you can see only The Witcher 3 and Far Cry 5 had 1% lows down below 60 at 4K, while the rest of the games here all ran very well at 4K and 1440p. And you could also kind of apply that to ultra-wide as well. If you wanted to do ultra-wide, it'd be probably a pretty good solution as well for SLI. But for 1440p, it's just a bit more than you realistically need. So, I mean, obviously there's going to be some naysayers, and it's like, I don't care, I want SLI anyway, and that's, you know, you could do that. It's the PC, so you could do whatever you want. You can build the system the way that you want to, and like I said, just my opinion, SLI is overkill for 1440p straight up. But that is going to wrap it up for our testing on the 1950X Threadripper system here from AVA Direct. Be sure to hit up the links down in the description below if you want to go over there and check out this system or any other system and kind of play around with their customizer. If you've got a certain budget in mind, you can kind of see what you might be able to get for that budget. Be sure to go check them out. And like I said at the beginning of the video, if you use the code JPFREESHIP at checkout, you'll get free shipping on any order here in the United States. So definitely be sure to use that if you are planning on picking up a system or a laptop or what have you. But I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. Please let me know your thoughts down in the comments below on the game performance, the Threadripper, the system as a whole. Let me know down in the comments below so that we can discuss everything. If you enjoyed this video or learned something new, don't forget to leave a like on it and subscribe if you're not already. And if you have been here for a while, you can always hit the notification bell so you never miss a moment of content here on the channel. And I'll catch you guys tomorrow for another video. Zura.